All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time to continue in our series on classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment. It used to be Tuesday Tao when I would say time to do the Tao now. But then we finished our series on the Tao Te Ching, going through Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, living the wisdom of the Tao, as you can see on the shelf. And we transitioned over to this book, The Wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, Classic Teachings on Spiritual Truth and Enlightenment. Because if you've heard of Dr. David R. Hawkins before, MD, PhD, 1927 to 2012, was recognized worldwide as a leading teacher of the way to enlightenment. And that's what we're all about on this channel, trying to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality, so that through that awareness, we can hopefully increase the quality of our experience. Our experience, ladies and gentlemen. His extensive background also includes 50 years experience in psychiatry. So he had a practice as well. He was an acknowledged leader in research on the nature of consciousness and presented lectures worldwide, ladies and gentlemen. So this is why I respect and love and give reverence or honor to Dr. David R. Hawkins, as well as many of the great teachers that exist in the field of consciousness and spirituality, what I like to call spiritual philosophy. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves continuing the section entitled Lifting the Consciousness of Mankind. Not only lifting the consciousness level, because David R. Hawkins is all about the calibrated levels of consciousness through applied kinesiology and the map of consciousness. So with that said, let us pull up and take a look at the map of consciousness before we get started and see how this applies to not only ourselves, but that which we may be about to learn. All right, here we go. Pulled it up, gonna click that, and here we have the book he wrote, The Map of Consciousness Explained, to prove an energy scale to actualize your ultimate potential. Ladies and gentlemen, however, for reference over here, we have a map of consciousness, and as you can see, here's the energetic log and the name of the level, predominant emotional state, and your view of life in that emotional state, a God view, and a process. So at the very bottom, we have shame, which is at level 20, which is an emotional state of humiliation, and you feel miserable or you have a miserable life view, despising of things, and it is a process of elimination. Now, as you move up the scale, there is more energy as well as increased levels of consciousness. And once you get past 175 to 200 here, going from pride to courage, is when you go from negative to positive in my own perspective. But anything below 200, we're talking about pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame. Going from higher energy state to lowest energy state is the survival paradigm. Above that, we have courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and reason. This is reason and integrity, going all the way up to what I like to call the lower levels of enlightenment, or a spiritual paradigm, as it is developed by Dr. David R. Hawkins here. And we're sharing all this for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind, so that we can increase the quality of our life. So in the spiritual paradigm, we have love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And these are emotional states of reverence and serenity and bliss. And then enlightenment, being level 700 to 1,000, is an ineffable state. Life just is. And you see all beings as one, as the self, which is a very deep concept. And this is pure consciousness, ladies and gentlemen. So that is the scale of consciousness. Let's come back over here now. I wanted to do that because that doesn't happen very often in this book, and that applies exactly to what he's referring to often when he's referring to the levels of consciousness. So with that said, let us dive in and continue the section entitled Lifting the Consciousness Level of Mankind. Dr. David Hawkins begins by saying, people think it's what you do or what you say or how you behave that matters. No, he says, it's the consequence of that which you are. And I want to thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I forgot to say that. Hopefully you got yourself a beverage. My cold infused tea here is looking like it's working, so forgot to put that in there. It's a beautiful day here. Hope it's beautiful wherever you are, regardless of the weather. All right, let's continue. It's the consequence of that which you are that matters. So that which you are, he continues, if you sit alone in a cave and in this, that which you are, is influencing the consciousness level of mankind. Even if you sit alone in a cave, it radiates out as an energy. And we went over this a little bit last time after we finished the section entitled Becoming the Witness. And then the sound of God is silence. And that was funny how that linked over into our book, our reading from the Corpus Hermeticum on last Wednesday, talking about the sound of God is silence. And I got a wonderful comment. And the guy said, let me give you a little bit of help here. The sound of God is not silence. I love the duality in that. Very hilarious and funny comment, because either one of us could be correct. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, a master can act without doing anything and teach without a word. And so I am no master. I'm here to learn with you in this process. Let us continue. So even if you're sitting alone in a cave, somehow you are radiating out your consciousness, that which you are, radiating out this energy. It says it radiates out as an energy, influencing the consciousness level of mankind. So people will ask me, he says, what can I do to help the world if each one of our contribution to this field, this overall connected field of consciousness that we are all a part of, experiencing, simultaneously, a collective consciousness is what I was trying to find there. And so if this contribution raises the level of the seas, so to speak, or the tide that lifts all boats, the consciousness level of mankind, to get us out of, the dark ages of the yuga cycles and back towards the golden age, to when we remember the things that are lost in our memories through the cycles. And if you haven't looked at the yuga cycles, we've looked at that before on this channel as well. Also, Oppenheimer Ranch Project has done a couple awesome videos recently describing the yuga cycles. Now, or maybe that's Magnetic Reversal News, one of the two. Either one, great channel to be subscribed to, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what can we do to help the world and raise this level of consciousness? The best thing we can do, Dr. David Hawkins says, is become the fulfillment of our own potential. Because each inch that the sea, quote unquote, the collective consciousness, the collective level of consciousness for all of us rises, then we will lift everyone on it. So we do what we can to lift the level of consciousness of mankind, and that influence then will have its influence. And if you're wondering to yourself, like, how can this be possible? What is being described here? Then hang on, because this is where he's going to get into more of how this makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. So the fulfillment of your own potential, because each inch that the sea rises lifts all the ships afloat, ladies and gentlemen. Now, nobody has enough strength in and of himself or herself to lift a single ship. But everybody is contributing, which makes it possible. So when everyone aligns themselves with a spiritual integrity, to be as unconditionally loving as possible, to have an appreciation, a harmony, and a reverence for reality and all of life and creation, which, is the beginning of a spiritual process. So hopefully, if you haven't got there yet, then that's what we are practicing. But this spiritual integrity to be as unconditionally loving as possible, as Dr. David Hawkins puts it. He continues, quote, "We lift everyone on it." So the more profoundly, the more aligned we are with the spiritual integrity to be as unconditionally loving as possible, then we lift all the levels of the sea, and by lifting all the levels of the sea, we lift everyone on it. So the more we are aligned with spiritual reality, integrity, and truth, and universal love, and the more profoundly we are going to affect the world without having actually to do anything ourselves except those things, which are very passive things after the, faking it till you make it kind of process, to where at first you're like, okay, I'm going to have to be integral. I'm going to have to follow the truth and be truthful. And I'm going to have to express an understanding and a harmony with universal love or reverence for universe and all things, like we were saying. And then technically, when we can do this, we're having this positive influence on the collective consciousness of all of mankind. And it's that easy. Like, we don't even really have to do anything. And honestly, we are doing this all the time, whether we like it or not, in whatever fashion we are doing it. So if we are pessimistic and negative and think the world is ending all the time, then that's how we're impacting the consciousness level of mankind, ladies and gentlemen. So think, closely about how it is that you want to impact and influence our collective field. You can tell even when you're in a room with someone who is in a very negative mind state or negative level of consciousness. I mean, let's go back to the map there. And like, if they're down here in fear, anxiety, and regret, they have this frightening, tragic view of it is contagious, as compared to when you are in the same room with someone who has a willingness, an acceptance, an optimism, and an understanding even. And they're inspired. I mean, these are things that we all know, that we can experience directly in reality with other people. And so this is what's being talked about here in a much larger scale. It's like the micro versus the macro, or the little versus the very large point of view, as above, so below, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, doing good things works, however. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not saying that, Dr. David Hawkins says, but in and of itself, that which you are and have become, and I would add that which you focus on and think about all the time and put your energy on, is what is truly influencing those around you and the collective consciousness of humanity, the world. And so this is where we stopped last week. We got to this point, the display quote: "The more aligned you are, ladies and gentlemen, with spiritual reality, integrity, truth, and the universal love, the more profoundly you are affecting the world without having to do anything." And that is a boom to lifting the consciousness level of mankind. And we could end the video there, but that would be hilarious because we read that last week. I just wanted to get us caught up to continue. So let us continue now without any rambling. David Hawkins continues, quote, the willingness to surrender how you see things then begins to transform how you see and experience life. So instead of being angry and condemning others all the time, you see that people cannot help being the way that they are. I mean, this is the most profound understanding that really changes your judgments of others. Because remember, the moment you judge somebody else, you do not define them, but you define yourself as somebody needing to judge because they are blissfully unaware of your judgments. And so it's like, it is a silly exercise. However, instead of being angry and condemning and judging in any way others, you begin with this new perspective. Remember, change your thoughts, change your life, change the way you look at things. The things you look at change, even though they may look the same to somebody else. Instead of being angry and condemning others, you can see that people cannot help being the way that they are. Another way I like to put that is everybody is where they are, where they're supposed to be on their journey. And so if they aren't even close to the entrance ramp of your journey, that doesn't mean that you are any better than them, because we are all on this journey personally for ourselves. And some of us have faster or slower cars, metaphorically. However, so we see that people are the way they are. Let's say there are these teenagers, Dr. Hawkins continues, throwing rocks at each other and provoking the police into attacking them, because you begin to see they can't help themselves. As you really go into great depth, you begin to discern the basic innocence of human consciousness. The consciousness itself is like the hardware of a computer. What does he mean? And the ego is like the software. So we've talked about the ego, we've talked about the consciousness. Let us continue. The consciousness itself is unable to tell the truth from falsehood. It's very important. The consciousness itself is unable to tell truth from falsehood. It cannot tell whether it is being programmed, like the Nazis did with the Nazi youth, into, certain paradigms, into falsehood, he puts it, or whether it's truth. You see, and so the consciousness, we'll say again, is unable to tell truth from falsehood. And so when you understand why Christ and Buddha said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," it was very powerful. The hardware of the computer is unaltered by the software. David R. Hawkins puts it, and he continues, the consciousness of the youth is innocent. So those kids who threw rocks then are looked at with compassion rather than a judgment of, oh, look at how stupid, or you know what I mean? Like, it's so weird how we judge. That's a different subject, similar subject, but I don't want to get off track too much like I normally do. So you can see that these kids that are being silly can be looked upon with compassion and an understanding that they know not really what they're doing. They're unaware, because we are still at a low consciousness state in our cycle of reality. And so at the moment, we are not all instantly awake and aware the moment we appear here in this physical reality. So you can look at them with compassion from that perspective, and you can see that they have been maybe abused somehow. You see their spiritual abuse, possibly. And because of the innocence of human consciousness, its inability to discern truth from falsehood, mankind is led down the path of falsehood. Dr. David Hawkins says we can think of the young people in Nazi Germany being patriotic, and what it stood for, and how it's like going to Boy Scout camp, he said. They're around the campfire singing songs and hiking and doing all this for their country. for their fatherland, for the Fuhrer. I had no idea he was going to go here. Here, this is a touchy subject, Dr. Hawkins. There's many opinions about this. How could they have believed anything other than that? Because it is what they were taught. Or the same goes for any example. Any example. How could any of us believe anything other than what we kind of program ourselves with here in whatever society we are in, ladies and gentlemen? And so, how could they have believed anything other? If we'd been there, we would have been doing the same thing. So you begin to see the innocence in the consciousness of humanity with this new perspective. So we begin to see the basic, oh, he says the same, I should have just kept reading. So we begin to see the basic innocence of human consciousness, and now it allows us, he says, to forgive everyone, hopefully to have a bit of this empathy and compassion and understanding for everyone, because you see that everybody's being run by the programs with which they've been programmed. I mean, what else could they think? People believe the media because television comes across so fast. They've already believed it before. So, it's like, how could they even possibly have a chance to question and examine what it is that they've already believed it before they've had a chance to even examine their questioning and even ask questions anymore, or even back in the beginning when we probably should have asked the most questions. It's like, wow. But I had no idea it was going to go here. This, as you can see, is incredible information, and I wish this could get to more people. But that's why I'm doing these videos, is because I would be reading this by myself, and I'd rather do it in this format so that we can hopefully get it to more people. So if you're getting value, consider subscribing and share this with somebody who is like-minded. It helps support the work that we do here on this channel. And I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Let us continue. People have been programmed, and our consciousness works differently than we thought. And this is what we are learning so far. And so the mind, he continues, gets programmed. And so you see, on the one hand, the ego survives. Now, we've done what is the ego quite a few times here, especially recently, and it's been great to get a deeper understanding of just that and how that relates in our spiritual journey of our own evolution, of our own consciousness, seeking to achieve a more enlightened state. Enlightenment would be, that ineffable pure blissed out. We don't want to be like a stone Buddha, but we want to be able to function at a very high level with some gusto and be able to enjoy our moments of life, higher quality of life. So on the one hand, the ego survives by juicing negativity. On the other hand, it can't help but do that. It can't help but be that which it is. And without the power of spiritual truth, frankly, it's unable to transcend itself. This is why transcending the ego is a topic we've discussed much. But remember, it makes an excellent servant a terrible master. So we don't want to destroy it entirely, because then we won't have that excellent servant. That is the ego. However, it's because of the great avatars, the Jesuses, the Buddhas, the, Thoth, Hermes Trismegistus. There's many of these characters. Whether you believe any of them existed or not, I believe is irrelevant. It is the wisdom that is passed down that is most relevant here. So it is because, David Hawkins continues, of these great avatars, is because of the great power of the spiritual truth and those who have realized this reality. Then there lies the source of their own existence. that creates the power of the field. And the power of the field is where people derive inspiration to then transcend and go beyond their limitations. Now, this goes back to the Yuga cycles. I did not expect it, but so the Yuga cycles here, according to this Google search, Yuga cycle is a cyclical timeline of cosmic or divine ages coming to us from Hinduism. And so these ages represent the life stages of the universe as well as the consciousness levels of humanity. And you can see we go through a very huge golden age for a very long time. And this is a 12 and a 12 and a 24,000 years total, probably a little bit off, like 38,900 or 25,500, there's always a variance in these great time scales. However, golden age is when we know everything. We have such high levels of consciousness and enlightenment and understanding that we probably don't even need to speak verbally. We just understand. We're telepathic and we can levitate things and fly and whatever you want to believe Atlantis was doing. However, Silver Age, we have an ascending on the left side and a descending on the right side. And we can see that as we descend, we would probably begin to forget everything. Let's look at this one that says over here, the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe was up here during the beginning of the descension of the Golden Age. We have Göbekli Tepe, which was buried, obviously of a very advanced society that knew the zodiacal structure and the 12 of the zodiac. And it's interesting that that still survives to today. However, as we descend, we forget everything, ladies and gentlemen. And then we go back in time, and the way we look from it, from where we are now, over here in the present, we go back and we see, oh yeah, 3100 BC was the first writing. But really, there's a flipped way to look at it, and that we had that all along, and that was when we forgot it. However, we go through the Dark Ages, of course, climate disruption, the fall of the greatest empires, and many plagues and whatever through the Dark Ages, and we don't know anything. And then the consciousness level, the reason I'm showing this is because I believe these are cycles that show how our level of consciousness falls and then rises again over time, going from the Dark Ages to where we are now, ascending again through the Bronze, the Dwapara Yuga to the Treta Yuga Silva, and then back Silver back to the Satya. But I just wanted to share with you the cycles that I believe we are experiencing as humanity right now, and this has to do with transcending the limitations of our ego and increasing not only our own level of consciousness, what the great avatars have taught us, and the great power of spiritual truth, and those that have realized the reality, and this is the source of our own existence. Now, understanding that these cycles happen, this creates the power of the field, and the power of the field is where people derive inspiration to then transcend their limitations. And this cosmic process is what is giving us, I believe, this inspiration, this divine inspiration that seems to come from our minds, which is our connection to God. But everything really is our connection to God. We talk about that in many different videos on this channel. Hawkins continues, we understand then that basically human consciousness is innocent. It doesn't know truth from falsehood. The reason he had to write the book, Power versus Force, which is the black and white one you see there at the very end, awesome book, get that for yourself, put it on your shelf, is because it staggered me, he says, and I realized that man has never had a chance to know truth from falsehood because of our subjective perspective. Like he was saying, if you were in Nazi Germany at the time growing up, you would have been like, hurrah for home and country, because you didn't know anything else. It was your subjective viewpoint. And so, and There's many debates about many things, so let's leave that off the table, ladies and gentlemen. I realize man has never had a chance to know truth from falsehood, he says. The best man has been able to do is follow the intellect and end up at a consciousness level of 460, which leaves you stuck right in the middle of the mind and its dualities. That's the subject we often discuss here, especially on Wednesdays, diving into the corpus hermeticum, ladies and gentlemen, the mind and its dualities, and therefore war and hatred and all are destined to go on and on and on, because without this spiritual energy and truth to transcend the duality, ego-based parts of our mind, the survival, instinctual, animalistic programming, without this spiritual energy and truth to transcend it, the mind is hopelessly caught in its own web. And it gets paid off for getting so. And it goes round and round and round and ruminates. And it gets a payoff. Therefore, it is self-propagating. That's very fascinating. That described the spiritual trap that was described in Hermetics. I think since this is my channel and you are here, then let us check that out, because what was just described was, I think, something that Hermes described right here. Wherefore, maybe I'll read a few lines. He goes, if you seek concerning God, you seek also after the fair, for there is one way which leads to the same thing. That is piety with knowledge. So that is what is being described there by Dr. David Hawkins, is, you know, when you realize that we have this sort of innocence where we can't, our consciousness can't really distinct or, you know, perceive truth from falsehood in a real fashion. It's just our subjective perspectives. And that the mind kind of gets in this trap in the middle of dualities, because it's hard to go any further without a pure spiritual focus to get us to higher levels of the scale of consciousness that we looked at before, to experience a different experience of reality rather than the fear and the hate and the anxiety, all of that thing. And it goes to war and, you know, the disagreements that we have and hatred are all destined to go on and on, because without spiritual energy and truth to transcend it, the mind is hopelessly caught in its own web, and it even gets paid off for getting caught in its own web because we think it's the right way. And so it goes round and round and round, and it gets a payoff. Therefore, it is self-propagating. This is how Hermes Trismegistus, from the 3rd century AD, the Egyptian sage god Thoth of wisdom and knowledge, describes that same thing to us right here. Wherefore, they are ignorant, and go not in the way of piety, dare call men fair and good, never seeing so much as in a dream what is good, but being subsumed and bound by all evil. See, that's the dualities of our consciousness that Dr. Hawkins is talking about there. And believing that the evil is good. That's the spider web we get trapped in. They, by that means, both use it insatiably. So then we get the payoff that Dr. Hawkins was saying there, and are afraid to be deprived of it. Taken, you know, we don't want it taken away. We like the gluttony. We like the whatever it is, the chasing of more money or the domination or all of the negative aspects, survival aspects of our ego, and are afraid to be deprived of it. And therefore we strive by all possible means that they may not only have it, but also increase it. Such, O Asclepius, this is my favorite little poem, are the good and the fair things of men, which we can neither love nor hate them. For this is the hardest thing of all, that we have need of them, and cannot live without them. That is Hermes Trismegistus, or the Egyptian sage god Thoth, teaching us this same thing from the 3rd century AD. So if you aren't making connections for yourself, ladies and gentlemen, there is one, because we were also making connections to the Yuga cycles from Vedic tradition. And so I love making connections, as you can tell, because this makes it all make more sense and seem more profound. So if you're getting value, I know that you are, smash the like button, and thank you for being here, staying here through this premiere, through this video, because this is great for me. I know I'm getting value. So it's self-propagating, this loop, this cycle that we get in, that Dr. Hawkins and Hermes Trismegistus Thoth just described to us. So the ego, unaided, he continues, without external spiritual truth, will forever go round and round, chasing its own tail. Well, we know about the kitten story, or the kitten's chasing its tail to get an everlasting lock on happiness. But the old alley cat says, that's not, I have learned that happiness is the most important thing, and it is located in your tail, but instead of chasing it, you go wherever you go and go about your business and do what it is that you know you need to do and want to do, and it will follow you wherever you go. And so, instead of doing this, the ego unaided, without external spiritual truth, will forever go around and round chasing its own tail, trying to get that eternal lock on happiness. Instead of doing that, each person, as they do what they think is personal spiritual work, is actually influencing the entire consciousness field of humanity, the entire energetic field, whatever you want to call this field that we do know that exists. The prevailing level of consciousness, Dr. Hawkins continues, of mankind then progresses as a consequence of the collective spiritual effort of all of us. Which is another reason we're here. So if you are here, you're part of that percentage. And give yourself a pat on the back, ladies and gentlemen, because you deserve it. And so every choice, ladies and gentlemen, every spiritual decision we make reverberates around the universe. Now, don't think of that like, oh, God is going to judge you and you better do good work. No. This has nothing to do with sin. Sin was an archery term that meant missing the mark, which means we need to try again and do a little bit better. Have a better aim, ladies and gentlemen, so we're not so often metaphorically missing the mark. And we are more aligned with that which we are connected to, not separate from God, Tao, universe, Atum, grand organized design, God, or great spirit. Like it says in scripture, not one hair of your head goes uncounted. And we discovered with muscle testing that that is a fact. That's a little mind-boggling, but however, anything anybody's ever done, thought, felt, every decision that's ever been made, this is talking about the Akashic Record, if you've heard of that, is recorded forever in the field of consciousness. People who say they don't believe in karma can do so as they wish. However, they can do so as a belief system, but they would still have to explain how it is that all phenomena that have ever occurred throughout all of history are recorded forever. How do you explain that every entity that gets born on this planet already has a certain level of consciousness? I mean, there's children that have literally, this is a different kind of, it's branching into a different subject than the levels of consciousness, but there are people that have past life memories and, deal with certain struggles or have certain opportunities, or, some are blessed and some are cursed. Some live behind iron gates and others see only the worst. So all that we can do is wish them well and love and appreciate all of creation. That was a little bit of a Rush song there. So if you like Rush, shout out to you. However, some are blessed and some are cursed. Golden ones or scarred from birth. The prevailing level of consciousness of mankind, ladies and gentlemen, progresses as a consequence of the collective spiritual effort of us all. And so these people that are trying to avoid the reality of this is just fine, but they're actually doing it. Like I said earlier, whether we like it or not, we are influencing and doing this. This is just part of reality. And so how can we explain that everything on this planet already has a calibrated level of consciousness the moment it's born? Therefore, we do not arise out of nothingness. The thing I forgot to say, like probably 50 seconds ago or a minute or so, was that there are young children. There's been children that are born that they get put in situations like piano or like in a cockpit of an airplane, and they just know how to do it instinctually. And so that's, I forgot to say it. Anyways, that was when I got into the rut. Some are blessed and some are cursed. We begin to see an experienced life. So when we can get out of the limitation of the time frame of the present and the linearity, and we can begin to see things from a very zoomed out perspective, not linear, but non-linear, or some would say cyclical, ladies and gentlemen, then we can hopefully arise out of nothingness to somethingness, the same way that a thought goes from waves to particles, or that reality and matter goes from nothingness to somethingness. And so I'll read what Dr. David Hawkins says. Therefore, we did not arise out of nothingness, but out of the somethingness that looked like nothingness. And what is that somethingness out of which we all arise, into which we all return? That takes us out of the limitation of the time frame of the present. I had no idea this was going to link so well to showing the yuga cycles there. That's just what I've been thinking about lately, because it everything's connected. Like everything is connected. And so that takes us out of limitation of the present, and we begin to see and experience life in a greater dimension, and the spiritual realities that arise out of contemplating such things. Encourage our investigation. Encourages our investigation, ladies and gentlemen, into spiritual truth and enlightenment, which is the very purpose of you and me and all of the wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the purpose of this kind of work. And so, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, continue to seek, to achieve, and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality and classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment, but through this greater awareness. So that through this greater awareness and understanding of not only ourselves, but our minds and our spiritual reality and God and the nature of the universe, we can hopefully increase the quality of not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a boon to the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins and lifting the consciousness level of mankind. We only got a couple pages into that section. There's actually 3 or 4 more pages. And we will see what we get to next week, next Tuesday, continuing in this series on classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to expand the description to get this book for yourself, to put it on your shelf so you can follow along in the future and have it for reference if you're ever seeking, to understand these deeper questions for yourself in the future and continuing this evolutionary consciousness process of humanity throughout the history of the ages. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, to seek to discover the hidden wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. And also remember, there is no way to happiness and enlightenment. It is the way. It is what we must create the ability within ourselves to bring to life, the activity, rather than the result. And when we can do that, all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get this much stuff or have that kind of, becomes irrelevant, because then we are there. And hopefully the entire journey is wonderful. Once again, I love and appreciate each and every one of you. If you get value, consider subscribing, smash the like, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I love to go back and forth with the people in the comments. Even, if you're for us or against us or whatever, ladies and gentlemen, it's all wonderful. So also expand the script, check out the landscape paintings, not the microwave, the landscape paintings. I have a link to my Etsy shop that is underneath the video. You'll hit more and it opens up a description, and the link is down in there, as well as a link to C60 Purple Power, the most powerful antioxidant known to man. And it's sublimated, it's pure carbon 60, sublimated in a couple different kinds of oil, but olive oil is most important for health. Anything you can do to get olive oil, avocados, the better things in our body, ladies and gentlemen, the better we are going to feel, especially antioxidants and that kind of stuff. So give yourself the gift of health, ladies and gentlemen. With that being said, thank you so much. I love and appreciate each and every one of you joining me here in these videos and in the premieres. It means so much to me that you would spend time here with me, with all these wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be the change you want to see. Be the example that you want to set. And that's a shout out to Rex. And then a boom to knowledge is a shout out to Diamond. And we will see you next time, tomorrow, on Wednesday Wisdom, diving deeper into the lost wisdom of the pharaohs and Hermes Trismegistus and Thoth, the Egyptian sage god. All right. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.